Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gut Checks. My name is Paul Weigel, and we're sharing stories of hope and inspiration and power of perseverance. Today I'm here, and I'm delighted to introduce my friend, colon cancer survivor, fellow Ironman triathlete, Fran Curry. Fran, welcome. I am so glad you're here today. Welcome.
Oh, Paul, I've been looking so forward to seeing you again. Thank you. This is awesome.
This is really awesome. Well, Fran, you and I were talking for a few minutes as we started about how important you have been to me for so long, and I want to give everybody some perspective for where Fran was for me as we went through, or as I went through my own journey, because honestly, I'm sure I would be here, but I would not be the same man that I am if it were not for Fran's involvement. And you have been amazing to me. You really have been. So when I got diagnosed, I knew when I got diagnosed,
making me cry.
Well, when I got diagnosed, I had really good resources up in Seattle. I was lucky that I got introduced to some good people who were local. But when I started, I realized that I needed people like me, and it was critically important. And certainly when people look at my book and they see things that I viewed myself as being a different type of cancer patient, that I was hitting this hard. I wanted to be a survivor. I wanted to be a fighter. I wanted to do these amazingly heroic things. And when I was talking to people locally, I wasn't getting that same type of experience. And I started looking around, and I talked to Livestrong, and Livestrong introduced me to the Ironman Angels.
Yes.
And Ironman Angels is there. Livestrong and the Ironman Angels, and I know Johnny Immerman is a friend of yours.
Yes.
And Ironman Angels introduced me to Fran. And I said, nobody can be as strong and as determined as I am. And God and time and fate and so many different things introduced me to Fran. And now I'm gonna cry. Fran was there for me throughout my treatment. And although he lives in Texas and here I was up in Washington State, he and I would trade countless notes back and forth and talk about our hopes and our dreams and what we imagined the future would be, and how we could get through this, and these just heroic things. But what he gave me, and Fran had cancer 5 years before I did. 3 years, three or 5 years, I'm not quite sure, but Fran, you gave me hope. And we'll talk a little bit more of that in a second, but I want to give a little bit of an intro about Fran as we go. Fran has been married to his high school sweetheart for 36 years, and to which he said in his note that they've been together for 43 years consecutively. I guess your wife says that, right?
She does.
That's awesome. And that he has 3 adult daughters and 2 grandchildren. As I mentioned, he's a stage 3. He was a stage 3A colon cancer survivor, and he was diagnosed after a race. And when I said I needed to know someone like Fran, that was certainly the case. And it is so neat as I'm doing these podcasts to be talking with Fran and sharing his story and our story, because it is so important to me as we are thinking about ourselves and others as patients for what it means to dig deep and do amazing things. And Fran certainly has been that. So Fran, as we start up, welcome, glad you're here.
Yeah, likewise, Paul, likewise.
Thank you. Fran, could you told, and so Fran and I also, one thing I did not say was, and maybe I did, Fran was so great with me that when I was doing an Ironman triathlon a few years after being treated, Fran drove down to Houston, and he ran in the marathon portion of the Ironman with me. And now, given my surgery background, I was not running a whole lot, so it was a good 6.5 hours that Fran and I had the chance to talk, and
Yeah.
I learned so many different things. And Fran, you told me some about your discussions with doctors and how you got diagnosed, but could you talk a little bit about how you got diagnosed, some of the background before you found out, etc.?
Absolutely. And Paul, before I go in that direction, let me just add one
For
thing,
sure.
because I was diagnosed at 45. And so what it's set up for my girls is that as they turn 35, 10 years prior to my diagnosis, they have to be screened or at least they should be screened for colorectal cancer. And so our oldest daughter has already hit that milestone. And so she was already screened. And fortunate that nothing is there, but our other two daughters are going to have to do the same as well. So you learn in this process, right? It's not just it's just you that's going through it. When you step back and you begin to get a broader view of what's going on, it's going to impact your kids as well. And so it's another note for people that as they're going through this process. I was thinking about it when you were mentioning Johnny Immerman, and as I finished my treatment, I had to complete a profile. And then as you were diagnosed and you were looking around for resources, you completed a profile. And Johnny's got this incredible database that, we must have lined up on probably 19 to 20 attributes that, put us in, some rare air that said, yeah, these two guys need to meet each other. And so it's, like I always say, it's God's perfect timing. But I like you. I work in the healthcare sector, so for me, it's I probably do a lot of self-diagnosis that I shouldn't do, and doctors have a tendency. I'm an accountant by background, so they'll say, "Fran, analytically, you're 100% correct," but practically you're 100% wrong. So, they always bridge for me, I know you can read and I know you can analyze, but I've got, whatever, 20, 30, 40 years of medicine to go with it. And here's what's actually going on. So they always bring me back to reality. But I was diagnosing, I had some activity in my lower abdomen, and I just thought it was an infection. And so, I was asking for a script, and one of my friends, a GI doctor, gave me the script the first time. I came back probably a couple months later, and he said, "No, I can't do that again. I'm going to have to get in there and see what's going on." But in between, I was running literally my first marathon. I hadn't done one before. I had two friends from my first job in Chicago at Arthur Anderson, and they were doing like their 20-year anniversary or 25-year anniversary of running that marathon. So I hook up with them. We get up to Michigan. It's, 10, 15 degrees outside. And the night before, one of the other guys and myself, we are dog sick. Like we're running fevers.
Wow.
We're got the chills. We can't keep anything down. And so we wake up the next morning, and now it's worse, because now it's 10 or 15 degrees outside. And it's like, well, let's see if we can do the marathon. We'll see how far we can go, right? And so my buddy literally drops out after 6 miles. The other guy was fine, and he finished. And I'm like, no, this is my first one. I got to see how far I can go. So, Paul, I didn't tell you this part. I did finish, but I was so far back in the group that when I came to a fork in the road or a T intersection, I had to decide which way to go, right or left. I was so far back that they had already rolled up a lot of the race course. So I really didn't know which way I was going to go. And I looked down, and if you can think, just how crazy our racing styles are, I see goo wrappers going to the right, and I see nothing going to the left. Yep, it must be to the right, right? So I end up, I do that. But Paul, for my first marathon, as a 26.2 miles, I ran 29 miles because I got lost twice on that race. So
wow. So you really did go the road less traveled, didn't you?
I really did, right? And so, and now I know those are bumper stickers and so forth, but it was funny. I mean, I literally did get lost. So we come back, we got to fly from Chicago back to Houston, and, I'm dog sick. And I end up going into the doctor's office. I have swine flu. So I've had swine flu now for 2 or 3 days, ran the race with it. I was just, the crazy stuff that you do, right? So I then make my appointment with the GI doc, and he was going on vacation, so he puts me under. He was going to do a topside scope because I had, ulcer type activity. He goes, but while I got you under, I'm just going to do a bottom side scope as well. So I prepared for a colonoscopy. I don't even get to see him because he had to take off for a flight. But he pulls my wife aside, closes the door, and he says to her, he goes, it's bad. He's got cancer. He's got to get in right away. Like, he can't wait. Like, he can't wait a month. It's broken through the colon wall. We're going to have to go for the biopsy, but he goes, I've seen it. That's what he's got. That was December 6th of 2009. So, sorry, man. Oh, every time. Oh, golly, I struggle every time. And I've told this story so many times. But so I get in for surgery on the 29th. My wife's birthday is the 31st of December, right? So she's got to spend, now the hospital stay with me on her birthday. So as you would expect, as an athlete, right? The doc comes in the next day. She sits down on the bed. She goes, I'm sorry, we did the staging and so forth. You're stage, 3A. I said, okay. He goes, so what's next? She goes, well, you got to heal from the surgery and we're going to start chemo. I said, all right. So how do I get discharged from the hospital? And, I don't want to be too graphic, but she said, well, first you've got to eat. Well, first you got to drink something. Then you got to be able to eat. Then you have to have a bowel. You have to pass gas, have a bowel movement. And then
make sure everything's working, right?
Exactly. Because I didn't get a bag. My surgery was at MD Anderson. She did it laparoscopically. So I was fortunate. I had everything still intact. And so she goes, but that's the process, right? I said, okay, so when can I start walking? She goes, walking? She goes, you're like 8 hours out of surgery. She goes, like, why don't we go in a couple of days? I said, if you'll do me a favor, pull the catheter now. She goes,
wow.
Catheter? She goes, why? I said, because that will force me to get up to go to the bathroom because I'm not going to wet myself. She goes, right. She goes, Fran, she goes, can we just wait a day? I'm like, nah, I really don't want to. I really want to start walking. And Paul, I got up. I got up like probably it was 6 or 8 hours after surgery. I stood up. I probably took 2 steps and I really couldn't go any further than that. But that started the process, right? They pulled the catheter they probably waited about 6-8 hours. And that day I started walking, and I am walking the halls of MD Anderson. I'm doing laps, lap upon lap upon lap. And she comes back and she goes, you are a nut job. She goes, I don't know what you're, what makes you tick. She goes, but all right. She goes, you're literally going to be discharged. So I checked all the boxes, right? Tell me what to do. I'm going to check the boxes. So I get done. Now I get home and I get an infection. So I've got to, now I've got to go back. Right. So they put a stitch in. They said, now you can't start chemo for a couple of months and so forth. So I go back to my general surgeon who puts my port in, and I thought, I'm going to get him. So he's a real stoic guy. Brilliant. So I go down to the Party City store. I get an eyeball. And I put it in my gut, like right where the cut, right where the incision is, right? I insert the eyeball right in there, and I put the gauze pad back over it. And so now I'm going to go in. He's going to check it all out, make sure I'm ready to go. And he pulls back the gauze pad, and he sees the eyeball, looks at him, and he goes, oh, that's really funny. And he takes it out. He just puts it to the side like nothing had happened, right?
Wow.
So I start the chemo, and like you, it was it was a 3-day process. I didn't have to do the radiation like you, so I was fortunate. My regimen was a lot easier than what you had to go through, and I was also fortunate that there were 2 other people that were diagnosed at the same time I was, and so we were all going through treatment together.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, so
one of them was different than mine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So so we had our colon club. And one of them had started about a week before me. One had started a week after me. So there were 3 of us. And we keep touch to this day that, we all went through it. And Paul, my port wouldn't work. Like, it would take me 8 hours to get my infusion. Then, like you got to take the bag home. And, first treatment, oh, this isn't so bad. Second treatment, I think I can do this, right? After the second treatment, we actually did the Austin half marathon. So, still trying to stay active and just make sure my body's doing all that it can do, right?
Right.
And after, I don't even know how many sessions I got into, maybe 6 or 8. Brother, I mean, it was taking me now almost the full 2 weeks to recover. Like, I couldn't run. I really couldn't do a lot, but I finished in July, and so finish in July. I do a muddy buddy with my youngest daughter, who was 13 at the time. So, it probably hit her the hardest. My oldest was already off to college. Middle daughter was in high school, and as you're probably experiencing now, the girls in high school don't want to spend too much time with their dad. So but the youngest was still, right? Yeah, but the youngest was still sweet and everything. So we would spend time together, and it hit her probably the hardest. And so we did a muddy buddy together, and really enjoyed that. And then we did an Olympic relay together. We had a lot of fun with that, and then I started on this path. I did the Chicago Marathon. That was in August, or no, I'm sorry, October. So I was about 3 months out. Literally, my buddy had qualified for Boston at that Michigan race. So I played the cancer card, and I got into Boston, raised money for I can't remember even the hospital anymore, but raised money for them and ran Boston, and then turned around and ran Chicago again. And then, like you, it's like, I'm feeling pretty good about all of that. I had this plan I may have shared with you. I was going to do some marathons and some long distance biking, and maybe an Olympic, and then a half Ironman. And then I want to do a full Ironman. Like, I'd seen it in 1978 on Wild World of Sports, and I thought, I really want to do that one day, And so you fast forward 40 years, and that's when I'm like, I just have to do it. Like, I can't wait any longer, and just jumped in and did it. And my wife will kill me because she hates when I tell this part of the story. And Paul, I'm not sure if I told you or not, but my swimming training consists of swimming a mile the week before.
I actually do remember that, and that was in my notes because I could not swim very well, and it took me a lot of work. And when you said that, oh yeah, my swimming training was nothing, I was like, what?
Oh, brother. I mean, like, the worst thing you can do, right? And this is where I'll say I have fuzzy logic. So my fuzzy logic was, well, I get to wear a wetsuit, and so I'll be buoyant.
Right.
Right.
Oh no,
Paul,
when I actually, Fran, I'm going to interrupt you for a second on that.
Yeah.
Because I was doing a little sprint triathlon last night, and my shoulders messed up, and I did a few strokes, and I was like, well, at least I've got a life preserver on, so I totally know exactly what you're talking about.
Right?
Yes, right.
I don't know if it's like we psychologically try to convince ourselves, that makes sense. That's logical, right? It's like, there's no logic, no one else is going to get to that conclusion. But it goes back to your original point, which was, people go through this dreadful disease, and sometimes they get in the fetal position on the ground, and they're like, they think they're going to wait it out. And there's another way. There's another way to look at this, and it's a challenge, and it's a bump in the road, and what can I do now to not only get through it, but can I inspire anybody else that's behind me? And so, and this, Paul, you end up going back to the hospital a lot for the CT studies, for the follow-up, to see how things, make sure there's nothing else, no other activity, and so forth. And so, I'm down at MD Anderson, and depending upon what you know about the different cancer centers, MD Anderson's huge, right? I mean, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of patients there on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So when I would go what I call behind the magic curtain, to get the CT study, Paul, I'd sit in a room with, I'm not kidding you, maybe 60 people, as we wait, right? We're all in our chair, we're all doing our barium, and that's just the barium group. Like, there's, like the mammography patients, they're in a totally different building. They're doing their own thing. So, just shows you the volume of people that, that are unfortunately impacted and then going through this at the same time. And you see the kids, and it's hard to see the kids going through it. You see some of the older people that, they're so frail, and then you just see other people that are so mad, and it's like, yeah, it's not going to help. You just, this is the card that you drew. So, some of the funny stories there is, you're wearing the gown, right? You got nothing on but the gown, right? So I'd wear the gown and my cowboy boots. And so that's a great picture, right? And so I'd never tie my gown. So my gown is open in the back, right? And the nurses are always like, "Don't you want to tie your gown in the back?" I'm like, "Nope." They're like, "But everybody can see, you're behind." I go, "You don't seem to care when I'm in the surgical room, and you don't seem to care when
Right.
I'm out. So why should I
Right.
care now?" Right.
Right.
So it was, and then patients would start laughing. Like they begin to realize that, yeah, we're all just human, like nobody's, you got to find a way to get through it. And I find sometimes humor is the way to get through some of that stuff. And,
Mm-hmm.
right or wrong, that's maybe my defense mechanism is humor. And that's what I would try to bring, to the patients that were there too. And a bit of a tangent, but my wife will say to this day, as crazy as it sounds, but it may have been a period of time when I was happiest in my life because I was there for everybody else. Like I knew what was going on, right? And this, nobody can take your place. Nobody can go and get plugged in and get the chemo, and nobody can do the radiation, and nobody can do the surgery for you. So, all right, that's my lot. That's what I have to do. But Paul, I think this too, and it may, I don't mean this to come out the wrong way, but your daughter at 3 years old, she didn't have to see, what was going on. She's asking you
Yeah.
now, which is great, right? And you're
Right.
sharing that story with her, which is so inspirational, and you're touching so many lives that are going to be just so greatly impacted by that. I had to watch my girls, and I could just see my wife, and I could see the nervousness in what are we going to do? And I'm like, it's not going to happen. God's got he's got a different purpose for me. This isn't my time. I knew that,
Yeah.
and I could say that, but they needed to believe it. They needed to have that reassurance. And so, sometimes being humorous or going out for that run. I don't know about you, and I don't think I shared this with you, Paul, but like when I would go out to this day, when I go out for a run, and I'm here in
Mm-hmm.
Texas, in Austin or Houston, I go out when it's 1 p.m. It's 100 degrees out. That's when I run because I want to purge. I want to sweat all I can sweat. And
Uh-huh.
I want to, and it's another challenge, right? And so I wanted to show my girls that, look, you can do these things. Yeah, it's not comfortable, and no, you wouldn't pick it, but just because you wouldn't pick it doesn't mean you don't have to do it. And so what do we do now? How do we take the perspective of, okay, here's where I'm at, and here's where I want to get to, just like your Ironman your training, Paul, right? It's like, I know where I want to be. So reverse engineer. What are my milestones? What do I have to hit? And where do I need to be at different points in time to know that I'm on track? And that was the pathway. And so my wife would say I was the happiest, but I was the happiest because I could be there for others. I wasn't
So
worried
true.
about myself. I could be gregarious. I could be empathetic. I could be there for them. What do they need? What are they dealing with? Paul, I'm not kidding you. When we would go down to MD Anderson, I push people in their wheelchairs. They didn't have anybody with them. Like
Yeah.
I always say, the worst part sometimes for what we saw were that people didn't have a patient advocate. And when you're sitting there in front of the doctor and they're spewing out vocabulary words that are 30 letters long, you can't write fast enough, and
No,
you
you
want to
can't.
know, you want to understand what's going on. So my wife was there with me, and sometimes, as I would pass out in the chemo chair, she'd have to be my advocate to say, hey, I think we need to do something here with them, right? People need that, and they need to be comfortable asking for help. There's no bravado here. There's no, the egos have to get checked at the door. If you need help, it's okay. People want to help. You're a great example of it. You're writing a book that's going to be inspirational. You're working with organizations to not only bring awareness, but you're sharing that story, and you're sharing it in a very transparent way. You can tell we're having an emotional dialogue, and that's what it is. It's emotion, and it's raw emotion, and that's okay. We're two
Yeah.
men. That's what we do. We share these emotions because real men can do it, and other men need to know that it's okay. The scope doesn't hurt. It's the
Right.
right thing to do. It's some
It's
of
the
the best.
best nap of your life.
Dude, it is the best nap of your life, and you lose a couple pounds because you can't. And that's maybe one thing I learned in the process, Paul. I don't know about you, but like when I get ready to do the prep, I noticed that like for a day or two before, if I went to soft food or to soups, man, the prep was nothing. The prep was so easy. Yeah,
Right.
if I'm eating steak or, heavy food, oh yeah, that prep's not going to go well, right?
Right.
But if you're thoughtful about it and you prepare for it, it is so gosh darn easy.
If I've had more, because obviously my treatment or my evaluations lasted a long time, but that was one thing I certainly learned too, was that having soup for 3 days beforehand was made the whole process very easy.
Very easy.
And boy, yeah. So make it easier on yourself for sure.
Right. Paul, I don't know how you were. So for my first prep, again, humor, I did not know what to expect. Right. So, I've got the at that point in time, you had to actually mix it in a gallon jug and you needed to drink it, like in a,
and put in the artificial flavors that always tasted horrible. And it was it was so nasty. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I got that set up. And so then I'm like, well, golly, I don't know how long this is going to last. So I get my TV tray, my, the dinner tray, right? I got my computer on it. I've got like a stack of books to read. And my wife's like, where are you going? I'm like, well, I'm going to the bathroom. I don't know how long this is going to take. So that's how I set up. Like, clearly I got to be able to still get some stuff done, right?
Right. That is true. I always, as I've gone through my process, I'm always a believer in, I'm going to be okay for a while. And then, so it's almost always that I will sit back down, I will get comfortable, and then I'll realize, nope, it's time to go back.
It's time to right.
Next time, and I have got my follow-up this in the next month. And so I will follow your guidance for the next process.
That's so funny.
That's good.
So how often do you have to go in now?
I still have to go every 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Certainly because, we're getting different things that showed up and polyps and whatever that I finally got cleared 2 years ago, and they still want me to double check. I think once I get years, then I'll be set up for 3, and then I'll move to 5. I think you're now on to 5, right?
I am. So now I'm at a 5-year increment. And as I got to my 5-year increment, now my oldest is going in. And so she's had her first, and then she'll wait 5 years. And then by the time she's doing her second, my middle daughter will be getting her first. And, as they keep moving up their continuum, then our youngest will fit in. There's a 7-year gap between the oldest and the youngest. So they're all going to be there pretty soon. So
it could be like a family party day, right? It depends on how many bathrooms you've got going.
Right. Well, and we're fortunate. They're all moved out now. The oldest actually lives around the corner from us, so we get to see the grandkids a lot. But so I really don't have to fight with them for the bathroom. Which with 3 teenage girls, there was a lot of fighting going on.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, boy, it's funny that as we've gone through, I've had this list of questions. You've covered so many of them. One thing that I know has been so important and that we've talked about was God's plan for you.
Yes, sir.
And that has always inspired me. And could you talk a little bit about certainly we don't know what God's plan is for us, right?
Right.
But you do, I think you've said to me, you did not think that God's plan was for you to die of cancer. And certainly it hasn't for 15 years. So
right.
Maybe can you say,
absolutely.
And part of it is today of your story too, and how you're sharing, but what is part of God's plan for you?
No, I appreciate that, Paul. So let me give a little backstory or context to this, because I was raised Catholic, and I think like a lot of Catholics, especially growing up in the Midwest, we were in Chicago, tendency to run from the church when you get to high school, and definitely did, and ran from the church for a long period of time. My wife and I get married, and like I said, we'd grown up together for the most part. I was 16, she was 14, so we've had a lot of time together, and we both knew that we wanted God in with our girls, not understanding what that meant and not knowing, what that was supposed to look like. So, we started testing different churches in the different areas we lived, and we end up in Houston, and I'm just struggling, not happy with the way things are going. And I had a dear friend who slid a pamphlet over to me that says, I'm sorry, let me back up. One other story in there. My business partner, actually, this is in the year 2000. He gives me my first Bible. So I'd never read the Bible. I was an altar boy, but the priest always read the Bible, and you just sort of take it for granted, right? They're a
lot of numbers. It's hard as a teenage boy to read a book that's got all those numbers, even if you're an accountant, right?
Yes. Absolutely, right? So So he hands me my first Bible, and I'm literally in a Bible study every Monday night with him and some of his friends. None of us went to the same church. I'm going to church, but every Monday night they would ask me, and so have you surrendered your life to Christ? And I'd say, no, not yet. And this is in the year 2000, right? Every Monday, all right? And so, I mean, I'm not kidding you, Paul. We probably read the Bible from cover to cover 4 or 5 times. We get to the year 2009. I get a buddy who slides a brochure to me and says, do you not like the way your life is going? Do you want to wrestle with God? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I want to wrestle with God. I don't like this plan. I don't like what he's doing. Yeah, I want to, I need some time to wrestle like Jacob, right? So
Right.
at that point, this is now March 17th of 2009, which is my wedding anniversary. And so, Paul, it's been 9 years, okay, that I've been reading the Bible cover to cover, warm sensation over my chest, and I'm now accepting Christ as my Savior. Like, wow, what an event. And so then I do this retreat in May, and it was unbelievable. It called the Crucible, an opportunity to wrestle with God. But in wrestling with God, what you're doing is you're reliving some of the events in your life that have caused you pain, that then put up barriers in your different relationships, barriers with my wife, barriers with my kids, barriers with people I work with my friends, because of things that I don't want to deal with, emotions that I've crammed down that I haven't allowed to come out because I've crammed them down. When I've had enough, they come out sideways. Nobody knows when it's going to happen and so forth, right? So I go through this crucible effort. I unpack some of those stories that have caused me pain, and then I'm able to produce a different outcome from that and move forward from it. So it's just unbelievable, right? So that all happens in March, and then May of 2009. We do the Michigan race in October of 2009, and then I'm diagnosed in December of 2009, right? So I'm standing in front of this men's group, and they'll say, oh, so did you accept Christ because of your cancer diagnosis? I'm like, no, I accepted Christ, 6 months, 9 months ago. No, like that had nothing to do with it. And then I had another buddy that said, he's been tapping on your head, McFly, for the longest time. And you finally listened because he knew you were going to need him at this point. And I think there's truth in that, because the journey's not easy, right? So what I've come to, and I still read every day. My wife and I do a devotional. We spend time just sharing, just checking in and sharing where we're at emotionally. And so what I've come to realize is, if you accept that God is in control, there is a release in that. I'm a controlling person. I think you probably are too, based upon your racing and how you come at it and the way you come at life. And when we're controlling like that, we can have a tendency to think that we can control outcomes too, right? We can control people. Right. We can control the events that we want to go our way. And that can cause anxiety, and it can cause strain. And I've given that up. I've said, I want to be the best that I can be for God. It's his plan. And I try to seek it, and I read, so I understand his word, and I understand what he's trying to say to me. I haven't heard the message yet of what he wants, and so I'm trying to be aware and be ready. I'm just trying to be ready. And to me, part of being ready is that preparation, Paul. It's understanding the word. It's understanding what he wants from me. But there's a physical preparation too. Like, that's my mental and preparation. My emotional preparations with my wife as we check in, what's going on in her life today, what's going on in my life today. Because there's going to come a point where I'm going to bark because something didn't go. I get off a phone call and I slam the phone down and I bark at the dog, and she's like, "What's your problem?" Right? So when we check in like that, it's, I've got a call today. It's causing me anxiety. So now she's more tender towards what my emotional reaction might be, and I am more tender towards her. But then there's the physical preparation too, right? Because we're going to get called on, and maybe part of our calling, Paul, is that's what we do. We run ahead and show people that they can run too. Yeah, you're sick, okay, but you're not incapacitated. So, is it uncomfortable? Yes. Right. Do you want to do it? No, but you can do it, and I think, when you do it physically, we all know this from the science, there is an endorphin release. It is going to improve your mental and emotional being. And there's value in that too. So, long-winded, I think I covered a lot of the bases there, but my feeling is God's just said, look, your calling is going to be, I said it, I think to my youngest, because she's about to embark on her first career. I said, look, you know, the road isn't paved. It's not a smooth road. It's a gravel road, but enjoy it, because the gravel road proves to you, you know, your perseverance. And that's, you need perseverance at the end of the day, right? And then, you know, because it's a gravel road, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to get through it. And when you get through it, you know this. I mean, like, there's two parts that I think we would all agree upon, and especially in an Ironman race, right? Once you enter the chute, that quarter mile to the finish line, everybody lined up, right? They're high-fiving you. They're, you know, man, they're there for you. They're just so charged up, you know, like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I mean, think about it, Paul. I mean, we're out there for 143 miles. I mean, that ain't easy. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, there's probably only a couple million people worldwide that have even done it to this day.
Not even that many, right?
Not even that many, right? I mean, it's a small group.
We're a small group.
It's a small group. So when you get to that last quarter mile, you want to savor it a little bit. You want to finish, but you want to savor it too, because just that emotion is just so intoxicating. And then when you get to the finish line, it's like, right? There's like that exhale of like, okay, I did it, right? Yeah. And then you walk through the finish line, and then I would bet that you and I are really similar. We look and go, when's the next race?
There's some truth to that.
There is some truth to that, right?
Yeah, well, for me, it usually is, and I you talk about the last part of the race, and certainly I think about when I finished Whistler, and it was Whistler was dark, and Whistler didn't quite have that quarter mile because it was a smaller race, but it was silent and quiet, and then we had the lights, and to have that celebration was amazing. But just as much, I think about this fall, I took part in the 70.3 here in Arizona.
Yeah, I heard that's a great one.
It is, but this year it was super hot. And so, and for me, one of my side effects long term is I don't do, where here you're talking about going up and exercising when it's 100 degrees.
Yeah.
For me, that is not a great thing, that my body starts to fail. And during the race, it's in the mid 90s, and my times are going down lower and lower.
Oh no.
And each mile marker, they're packing me in the ice, pouring it down me just to keep me going.
Oh my gosh.
And I get to the last turn in the 70.3, so not as much of the celebration, but I get to the point and I'm 50 yards away from the end, and I think I see a friend of mine, and I start slowing down, and it turns out she's not there. So I just keep going. And I had mentioned my times have been getting slower and slower. Well, the deadline time for the 70.3 is 8 hours and 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I cross the finish line, and I know my time is close, but I don't know how close. And they say, Paul Weigel has finished in 8 hours, 29 minutes, and 51 seconds.
Come on. Oh my gosh.
So if my friend had been there,
I
would not have finished. I would not have been an official finisher. And certainly when I was done, I was like, I'm never doing another race. And then here I am. But then like 2 days later, yes, exactly. I'm like, nope, what's going to be the next one? And then I've got this big
that is
series
awesome.
This year. So
you have to have a picture of that timestamp. That is
I
amazing.
should. I'll put that up behind me. They will say that.
My gosh, Paul, that's crazy.
And you know, actually, for different reasons, Ironman is no longer doing that race here. I think there have just been some logistical issues. So I'm the last official finisher ever for Ironman 70.3.
I love it.
By 9 seconds. So how's that? So.
Well, now you need an epilogue for the book, because
that is true.
That's going to stand.
Yes, it will. That'll be my lasting legacy. Well, in terms of, you talk some about God's plan. Some of God's plan is just what you've shared today, Fran. I mean, that.
Agreed.
Thank you for being so honest and so vulnerable on so many different things. I mean, I know as we started, where I talk about you and your story and who you are has been so magical and so important to me for so long.
Mm.
And I know
Well,
we
likewise,
meet.
brother. Likewise.
Absolutely, brother. And I think we said at the start, maybe it was before we started recording, that when I'm down in Texas later on this year, we can do some of that celebrating. So,
Paul, that would be awesome. You need a place to stay, you're more than welcome. Love to
appreciate that.
introduce. I can't wait to introduce you to the family. And
And
before
I'll
we
bring
run out of
Natalie along
time,
for sure.
I love you, brother.
I love you too. Thank you. I really appreciate it, Fran.
Yep, it's the truth, man. We will share something for a long, long time. We really will. And and we get each other through it, so I think about you every time I go out to race. I'm fortunate. I had an ankle issue a couple of weeks back. I was supposed to do an Olympic, but it was that perfect plan because I got to recruit my oldest daughter in. I don't think I mentioned, she was actually invited to the Olympic trials as a swimmer. So I was very fortunate, as a distance swimmer as well. So she got to do the swim portion for us. The youngest daughter did the run. So we got to do the relay here. And Paul, as funny as it is, we took first place. Like it was just amazing, right? And so now the middle daughter and the youngest daughter are going to do the cap tri here in May. The oldest daughter, myself, and then the middle daughter's boyfriend are going to do the relay. And so it's just, we're starting back into it. The family's getting back into it. And it's really, really cool. It's something, this, it's not a team sport per se, but we're all doing it together. And so, it's, we're texting each other, we're sharing workouts, and,
Right.
it's something that brings us together. Right. And that's how it is for you and me. Your book is going to be, it's going to be glue to a lot of people. You're going to get attached to a lot of folks. And I appreciate you picking up the baton and running with it for the awareness, for helping men understand that this isn't something to be afraid of. Look, God has made his plan clear for you. You're the lightning rod, you're a beacon here for people to know and to learn about. And so thankful, thankful that we are, not only that our paths have crossed, but they're going to be linked for life.
They will be. Absolutely. I want to close by just saying one thing. Fran Curry, you are an Ironman.
Oh, Paul, man, is there, you did Houston, so so that shoot, I'm not kidding you when I tell you this. It took me, I swear, Paul, if we go back and look at timestamps, I think it took me a half hour to do that shoot. And,
wow.
And so I've actually got a video, and the race director, they call you in, right? I mean, they see your number coming for a long way.
Right. Oh, so, Fran, I interviewed Mike Riley earlier this week.
Oh my gosh. That's who called me in. So
yeah.
So Mike sees me and he's like, what is this guy doing? Like, he's been out there for, there's a turn. So he's only seen me for like 10 minutes, but I've been on the other part of the shoot for the last 20 minutes. I touched everybody's hand on both sides. And then when I came all the way up to the finish line, he's like ready to call me in. Well, I went back because I had to do the other side of the shoot.
Oh,
right.
Funny.
And he's like, what is this guy doing? So now I'm getting ready to cross the finish line, and he gives me the Heisman pose, and he goes, no, he goes, stop right there. He goes, they're going to call you in. And that's what they did. So it was special. I mean, it really is. Now, I did a picture book for my family, and I actually have that as the closing photo. It was really pretty special. So I picked up Mike and I carried him across the finish line with me.
You'll have to send me that photo. That's awesome.
Okay.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Fran.
Likewise.
This was beautiful.
Likewise. I agree. I apologize for all the emotion, but
are you kidding me? I've been crying too. So
it is. All right, brother. Well, have a great day. Anything you need, holler. Again, thank you so much for what you're doing, and ready to jump in with both feet and help you any way I can.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
All right, brother. Right.
God bless. Take care.
God bless you. Take care, buddy.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found some inspiration on the power of perseverance while finding and clinging to the joy in life. To learn more and continue this conversation, join us at irondadbook.com and make sure to sign up for our newsletter and free gift.